life was very good. I sang in the three choirs and became godmother to the organist's daughter. My parents were only a few miles away, where my father was vicar of a church in Herefordshire. Initially, I worshipped at the cathedral, but then decided I wanted more experience of a parish church community, which is what I was more used to. I became a member of the PCC. The church was only a 2-minute walk away from my flat. Please think on that, a 2-minute walk. But life was good. How could I know that by attending this church, my life was going to change forever? I am a victim of serious sexual abuse. Church of England.
Police officers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to pick up a few points at this point. We're being flexible. We're going to cover the things that Becca's talked about, but we're going to take a slightly flexible approach. So I'm going to pick up a few points building on what Anne has just said there, and then perhaps we'll see how we go, and maybe we can do some talking together about that. But Anne has obviously just shared with you a bit about what life was like when she lived here in Gloucester, and given you some of that sense of connection, and just how enormous it is for her to be returning to Gloucester after so many years. And I think hard for any of us to really put into words the bravery of coming back to this place and reliving, in a sense, and retracing some of those steps that you walked back then as the person that you are now. So Anne and I first had contact last year. Anne wrote to Bishop Rachel, who's our diocesan bishop. That was in August of last year. And then Anne and I picked up contact into the autumn. I think it's fair to say, Anne, and please tell me if you think otherwise, I think it's fair to say the first time we met each other was difficult. Yeah.
It was difficult, yes. Bishop Rachel had replied to my letter saying that she believed me and how sad and shocked she was at hearing about my serious abuse. And that gave me more encouragement and strength to continue with my journey and to be here today. The thought that she had written and said she believed. But then I was told that I was going to be referred to a safeguard, and I had no idea what a safeguard was. And I think poor Brett, he probably had difficulties with me, because I think I came resentful that I'd been referred on to somebody else. But we got through that, didn't we?
I think we did.
Yeah.
We got through that and we got to here, didn't we?
Yes.
And I think that's really helpful, because what I think I can recall from that time, and I think is an important thing for us to just take a moment to pause and think about, is that for you as a victim, you'd taken this enormous step of reaching out, writing the letter that you did, and popping that in the post and hoping that you might get some kind of response. You get what felt like you described a really helpful response from Bishop Rachel, but then a sense of, oh, but now she wants to end that contact and hand me over to someone else who I don't know who this person is or what they do. So I think that's something that's really important for us to just take a moment to think about how we communicate some of that stuff.
Yes.
And we've had conversations about that, haven't we?
Yes.
How much do people out there know about safeguarding in the Church of England? Do they know what safeguarding teams do in diocese? And I think that has been really helpful for me to reflect on in our team, as you've kind of asked those questions about what does it mean, what's your role, how can you help me? So I think that's a really helpful point at that stage.
And I think it's a difficult role for a safeguard, because they come across as being a support to a victim, as you do, and yet you're paid and employed by the Church of England.
Mm.
And that, I think, for many victims, find that quite a difficult step at times, that there is this kind of two-way,
Yeah.
difficult role for you.
I think it's another really helpful point, because I think trust is a word we've used quite a lot, and we've spoken about what does trust mean, what does it look like in the context of our communication and our working together. And I think fair to say that certainly at the outset of our contact, the levels of trust were fairly low, because these were new people, not least somebody who, as an employee in this diocese, as a representative of the Church of England, and all of that brought up for you about the sort of institution of the church. Is that fair to say? Do you want to say something
Very
about that?
fair. And also, this contact was only by telephone. We hadn't yet met.
Yeah.
That didn't come till a lot longer, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had a few months of
Yes.
that run-off contact before we met in person, didn't we? Yeah.
But I think especially for me, having come from a long line of Church of England clergy in my life, to have been abused as I was, I have confusion about my own personal beliefs. And I think that for you safeguards, I'm sure other people will come with similar difficulties, but I think mine was, as I say, I've got such a background of clergy and bishops and whatever.
And I think that's another really helpful point, that we won't ever know, and we shouldn't come with assumptions about what someone might bring with them in terms of their beliefs, their faith, the confusion that goes with that, or a lack of, or a sense of loss of that because of the abuse and the context of it. What do you think, from your perspective, Anne, has been helpful or unhelpful on that front, in terms of the communication you've had both with the safeguarding team here and Bishop Rachel, who obviously you've had some contact with as well?
A sense of loss, and it's difficult to put into words, really, because part of me is wanting to retain some sort of Christian belief, which is what I was brought up with, and some of me just shuns it. because of the situation that I was placed in. And it's a continuing confusion.
Yeah.
It adds to one.
We thank you, Anne. I'm remembering from that first meeting we had, which was it was us two and a family member of yours who was supporting you, and Bishop Rachel.
Yes.
And we had a bit of conversation at that point, didn't we, about faith, belief, the confusion that you've talked about. And then also, I think there was at least one point where reference to sort of prayer was made, I think by Bishop Rachel, about holding people in thoughts and prayers. And I think there was a point at which I felt really pleased that you had felt able to say that language is quite difficult for me. Can we not talk in those terms? I do remember that a bit of
I
that.
do
Yeah.
remember that strongly, and I still find it difficult if somebody says they're going to pray for me, and some friends have sort of emailed me knowing that I'm coming this afternoon, and I find the ones that say they're praying for me much more difficult to accept. I think I would rather have the word, we're just thinking of you, or we're behind you. And it seems just so sad that I've even had to ask my husband to not say that he's praying for me. And that is it's a terrible loss. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. I was thinking about some of what when we were having some further preparations together yesterday, and we were talking about the importance of language, and we were also talking about what trauma can feel like, and the word loss or grief was something we spoke about. I wondered if we could take a step back to the language around victim or survivor or person with lived experience. I know that you feel really strongly about that, and it feels important for people to hear what you have to say about that. Is that okay?
Yes, I do feel very strongly that I am a victim. I've never really liked the word survivor. If you fall into the sea and you're pulled out, yes, you've survived. But I think for people who have undergone abuse of any kind, have to learn to manage the rest of their lives. It's not like flu. It doesn't stay with you for a couple of weeks and then go. It's there with me all the time. Sitting outside today before I came in, and it's completely changed outside the cathedral, which is lovely. But I do suffer with PTSD, and I was back where I used to be sick physically with anxiety. I would go behind my car and hope that nobody from my office was watching me. And I then managed to bring myself back to the present, and no, there was lovely stonework, etc. But that is how it is with me, and I would think it is with most victims. And yes, I do find the word survivor difficult, and I've noticed that the Church of England always puts the two together, victim, survivor. And I wonder if that is a way of the church almost distancing themselves from the real feelings that victims continue to have. And is it a way of the church almost denying one's allowance to still feel that there are difficulties in one's life? Is it the church pretending that actually nothing has happened? And yes, you're a survivor, I'm still standing.
Thank you. And we've talked about this quite a bit, haven't we? And about the language and how important it is. And I think what I would add to that is that the importance of really listening and trying to understand the perspective of an individual. So it was really important for me to listen to you, and it didn't take very long, and maybe it took longer than it should have done for me to really clock. Anne's only using the word victim here, and I'm probably continuing to use victim/survivor, and I think it was really helpful when we were able to have a direct conversation about that, about what does it feel like for you? How do you describe the what happened to you and the impact that's had on the rest of your life? And as you really eloquently described, victim is what feels right as the description for that for you. Of course, for other people out there, they might well identify with other language, and so I think it's really important that we don't make any assumptions about what language we think should be used or someone might want to use. Does that make sense? Anything you'd want to add back to that in response?
It does make sense, and it's interesting that only half an hour ago Bishop Rachel came in just to say hello to me, and she used the word victim and survivor just within a few minutes of meeting me. She did know that I did not like the word survivor, and still being used just literally a few minutes before we start this meeting. So
language is
it's really important,
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other part of language I'm just thinking about, which really connects to some of what we've just talked about then about PTSD and feeling very back there at the time and what was happening. We very early on, I say you very early on, made it very clear to me that using the name of the person who abused you was too much, was too difficult. And so from that point onwards, we only ever referred to that person by their initials. Yeah, because that was what felt like we're acknowledging what that person did, but it feels manageable for you for that to be in the form of the person's initials. Is there anything that you wanted to say about that?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No, except that just using initials was helpful to me. And you might find that people find it very difficult to say the name of their abuser. And that could be a tip, couldn't it? That it was something that worked for us, that we only ever used the initials. Yes.
Yeah. If I'm just wondering, I'm just take a moment just to imagine if things have played out slightly differently. If I hadn't picked up on victim is the word to use, not victim, survivor or survivor, and if I had continued to use the person's full name, what would that have meant for you in terms of being able to engage in the dialogue, the support, the conversation?
Difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have been
I
able to
might
continue?
well have put up a barrier
Yeah, okay.
and possibly, yes, ended our conversations.
Yeah. The other thing I know that you wanted to talk about today, Anne, is about emotions and about how those can present. Um, I think there's probably something you might want to say about anger and how that has presented itself, both in our communication and in the process of walking through the what happened. I want to just leave that.
Yes, I'm not an angry person. I never have been. But there were times when, yes, I could feel that there was anger. Um, I think for me there was more sadness, um, guilt, which all victims have, shame, and really just living a quiet life of despair. And therefore, when somebody like Brett came into my life, it has made a huge difference. I don't think probably you're really aware of how much you have done for me. And after such a long time um, being silent, this this is the right thing to be here today. Um, Up until you all arrived, it seemed quite surreal that I had come back to Gloucester and suddenly meeting you. Yeah, it brought the reality, it brought the tears, and that's good because this is something that you're going to have to face a lot of different emotions, and not necessarily gratitude for being listened to. Unfortunately, yeah, you may well face a lot of different emotions and questions asked again and again. And so often there isn't an answer for people.
Thank you. I think gratitude's a really interesting one because I don't think that any of us in this room or online who may hear from people who maybe a long time down the line, like you, after the abuse happened, or maybe more currently sharing. I don't think we should be expecting those people to be filled with gratitude that we've listened to them. I actually think it's really important for us to hold a sense of being privileged and feeling gratitude that somebody has felt safe enough to maybe say that first thing and share that first bit of information about their experience. Um, I think that feels for me important actually, and I think for you to know that's been an important process of our contact. That um, you know, I don't know if you had looked back on reflection and thought, well, I hope Brett knows that I'm grateful because that wasn't actually part of the process for me. Actually, what was important for me, particularly in that first very difficult meeting, where I think that the the emotions really surfaced for you, didn't they? In a way that I think really surprised you and probably shocked you.
Yes.
I really felt a sense of privilege of being there with you and being able to honour all of that and say that's valid and important. Really important that you could feel you could be real about it and not having to keep a lid on it and let's all be very civilized and quiet.
And having kept the lid for so long,
Yeah.
this, yes, but it didn't really erupt. It still seems to be quite it's still a journey. This is another step that I'm taking. Coming to Gloucester even yesterday. A year ago, when Brett and I first met, I couldn't have envisaged actually physically coming back to Gloucester. And yet this was where I had so started my work and loved it so much. Yes, it's strange. But I think that is the thing that one has learnt to live with a mask a lot of most of the time, and to be letting it slip is a huge step.
Yeah.
For me and for anybody else that might be contacting you.
And I think that kind of sense of masking that you described is something that you quite successfully done for the vast majority of your life. And so actually I know that we spoke about what does it feel like to allow that, as you say, the mask to slip or for things to kind of bubble up, not necessarily an eruption, but coming to the surface. What does that look like or feel like? And I know that you expressed a sense of it feels uncomfortable because it feels selfish somehow because you'd lived so long with suppressing that, and also you described putting other people's needs first in all kinds of different areas of your life. Yeah.
Fear, probably, as much as anything. Yes, and being in a different place was, and still is, strange.
And we were talking yesterday about the idea of a journey, and I really liked what you said. It's the first time I think you'd said it to me. You held out your hand and said it's a bit like this. It's not one singular journey. Actually, it feels like there's all these different strands that are kind of different journeys within your journey in relation to different aspects of your life and the person that you are. And I hadn't really thought about it that way before. And I thought it was a really helpful way for me and for anybody else to think this isn't in the same way that we've talked about it not being a sort of linear journey, that it just gets smaller and smaller or gets easier and easier. But also it's not just one thing, that for you actually you think of there are different parts of your life and who you are that feel like there's an ongoing sense of journeying with. And actually I think you've spoken about some of that today, about emotions, about faith or belief, and what does that look like? The having contact with new people who are kind of taking that sense of trust, what that means. And I think those are just some of the probably many strands that kind of connect.
I think also that for you having come today, it really encourages me to feel that you're interested enough and wanting to share and hear. And my whole idea when I first wrote to Bishop Rachel was to be able to reach out and hope that somehow, and I didn't know then how to help. And this is where both you, Brett, and Janice have come into my life and I had no idea that, and a year later, after sort of opening up, I would be standing here and trying to share, and I can't say teach, but that's how it feels. And thank you, because I can see that you're behind me. You're backing me.
But I think teaching probably is the right word, because actually this is about us learning from you.
Yes.
Hear some nods, see some nods, and hear some sounds of affirmation there. Absolutely, that we're in agreement, and this is really, really important, and maybe hard to pick up for those online. But I think there's a dripping, maybe in a radiator or somewhere over there in the room. That's all we can really hear when Anne's talking, because there's silence, because people are really listening and really wanting to absorb what you have to say. I'm wondering, Anne, if there's anything at this point that comes to mind that feels we've covered some of the themes that we've talked about as we were planning this, but if there's anything that feels is coming to mind that is important to say at this stage.
I am very aware of the dripping. I have been left with being hypervigilant, and I think this is something that I find really hard. Different noises, different. Just having, if I'm out, I must have my back. I don't want to be having people kind of behind me. But it's very wearing being hypervigilant, because you're just taking in so much all the time. And I appreciate that I can not hear you, and yet I can see you all listening, and it's really helping me, honestly.
Should we?
Yeah.
Have a...
I think that's probably a good point for us to take a pause. Yeah.
I think we'll have a couple of minutes pause just to allow people to kind of stretch and breathe and reflect. So we'll just take a couple of minutes to do that, and then I think we'll hand over to Yanis, and then we'll come back to Brett and to Anne if she wants to speak anymore, and then we'll go to questions. So I'm just going to mute us in the room, just so that we can kind of be a bit shuffly with our chairs, and I'll try and sort out the drip, and then we'll come back together in a couple of minutes. So do have a stretch at home as well.
First, I would like to say a big thanks to for her courage and her expertise by experience. We do believe that survivors, victims, persons with lived experience, people with histories of abuse, or any person who have been subject to abuse has a voice. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say a big thanks to Brett for listening. And this is the reason I wanted to focus on listening and on sharing. I want to reflect with you why talking and listening about trauma is not only valuable, but is essential. And is essential not only for survivors, but is also essential for any community, for any workplace, for any system, for any group or any community we're part of. Because when someone speaks, the whole body speaks. By this, what I mean? I don't mean just the physical body. I think I mentioned many times the emotions. But the body we belong to, our communities, our churches, our institutions, our society, for one more reason, because trauma is never only private. Abuse injures not just the individuals, but the whole body of belonging around them. And so the recovery has to be also communal. And why this is happening? When we had the conversation with Becca, what would be a very good idea to present with Becca an idea, and I said, I would like at this stage, after working with victims and survivors for nearly 8 years. Prior to the Church of England, I was working with victims and survivors in the United Reformed Church. The first name that came to my mind was one important turning point in my life, reading Judith Herman. For those who may know, look for this name. So I opened the book I had in my home, and I found something that I have highlighted. Traumatic events are extraordinary, not because they occur rarely, but because they overwhelm the ordinary human adaptations to life. And trauma silences. And this makes people live with trauma for very, very many years. It lies in the memory of the body to which they belong. This is why the language of moral injury is so important in safeguarding. Moral injury, I don't know if you don't know what it's all about, names not only the suffering caused by abuse, but also the betrayal of trust by communities and institutions that should have protected people. And abuse in the church wounds faith and values. Anne also mentioned the deep values had before her experience. When it's more, and it's Herman is very clear. I also have this in my mind when recovery can only take place within the context of relationships, because abuse cannot occur in isolation. Abuse happens in a context of a relationship. So any recovery also needs to happen in the context of relationships. And where is the role of the talking and the listening can play in that healing? First of all, it's quite important when you are listening to validate people's experiences. And this is what Bishop of Gloucester did with Anne. Believe her, validated her experience. And this was the first starting point for Anne and many others who actually find that kind of response of acknowledgement to feel safe. When we listen, truly listen, we validate that truth. We resist denial, minimization, or defensiveness. In Herman's words, remembering and telling the truth about terrible events are the conditions both for the restoration of the social order and for the healing of individual victims. The second important thing about listening, and we need to remember, and I will make a small correction about the end of the previous people who spoke, it's not only about teaching, it's about sharing. When survivors share their stories, they break isolation. They transform their private pain into collective memory. And we know that this private pain can take many years. On average, 27 years according to the records and the research that has been taken. In my case, it took 34 years. For other people, can take even 50 or even 60 years, or can take 2 years for us. When institutions listen with humility, they allow those stories to reshape practices, policies, and culture. So the words we're using at the first place when we want to respond restore the people's experiences because they build in a relationship between the person who listens and the person who responds. And when you put that from the first place, come to the second important context that I was telling you earlier about relationships. Many often when I'm going to diocese or in the national safeguarding team or in the church house, and I hear colleagues we're doing survivor participation, they say very often the same word. Everything is about relationships, doing something together to make us feel more safe. But the other important element of listening, and this is the most difficult part, and I would say is something we should do better, is about lament. It's about the loss, it's about the grief. It's very, very rightly Anne talked to us about her own journey. And here in the lament, we must allow anger, grief, despair to be expressed without rushing to silence or solutions. And sometimes we as a safeguarding professionals, I'm a social worker by profession, sometimes we might give the space to listen, sometimes we might rush to give solutions. Because we're good people, we're doing it with good intentions, but we don't allow the space for people to express that emotions, that grief that comes from many years of being in a private pain. Lament is not weakness. And I would like to bring here a theologian. His name is Brian Powers. I met him back in April in another gathering of people in the University of Durham, who said something very important. Lament, and when we actually get to that stage, allows the betrayal or the loss to be named with these words, because language matters a lot in this conversation. And make it real. So the values are not subtle, the values can come back. So the body itself can be healed, but not the physical body only, the whole body. And sometimes that really touched me today, but what I've heard by Brett and from Anne is one thing. I noticed the difficult even from Brett, which I do understand, the emotional toll that takes from both the listener, but also the emotional toll of the speaker. But they managed to share it with us. So this can stay with us. So I would like here closing, I know I don't have enough time, but I would like people to remind something which is about the third important element of recovery in Herman's framework, which is about reconnection. What actually Anne does at the moment, reconnecting with Gloucester. In my case, and in my view, I think it's important to use the word recreation. And recreation, I prefer it because abuse destroys trust, faith, and dignity. Survivors communities cannot simply go back. They must recreate them. They will go back. We always go back. But we have the power to recreate ourselves, build new values, new ways of belonging, and new forms of trust. Or another survivor who actually lives in Wales, who always teaching me, and I have a very strong connection with that survivor over emails and online communication. I never met her in person, but also is telling me exactly the same. You make me believe in myself. Her name is Molly, it's not a real name. You make me believe in myself. I would never imagine that I would like to my local councillor and I would ask to take part in a campaign about preventing suicide. Community is where this matters to me. What I'm trying to say here talking and listening are both very important elements, but what really makes the big difference for the whole community, for the whole systems, for the whole institutions, is co-production. And co-production is not about producing something, focus on the production, but it's about coming together. I really like the co-production. The first element of the first part is of coming together, victims and survivors. And this means that not only survivors are listened, but actually engage alongside institutions as equal partners to shape the whole body. Not the physical body, the body where people belong to. And the victims and survivors who find the courage to engage with the church at the moment, the vast majority of these people are at that stage of reconnecting, reconstituting their work with the church, but also their own feelings and their own journeys of faith. When co-production is genuine, it is more than participation. It becomes repair, it restores trust, and it allows both individuals and communities to heal. When it is tokenistic or ignored, it risks deepening moral injury. Because the victims and survivors who come on our doorsteps come because they still have a hope or faith. So let me close. Talking and listening about trauma are never just private acts. They are communal responsibilities. Validation honors the truth. Sharing builds community. But recreation restores dignity and belonging. And when co-production happens, actually co-production takes all these acts I was telling you and turns them into shared responsibility, into moral repair. And when survivors speak, the whole body speaks. The question for us in this room, but also online, or in any community who really cares about safeguarding in the church, is the question then is, will the whole body listen, validate, and recreate itself into something safer? It's a question to take with us. But this is what we're doing at the national team. We really believe that if we really and truly listen to victims and survivors and take their voices, we can shape and make safeguarding improvements and changes of the church to make it a little bit safer. We will never wake up in one day and we will say we live in a safe church or in a safe society. I will use the word that Anne used. It's a journey. But we can achieve many things by listening, sharing, and recreating change.
Thank you, Yanis. Yanis made a couple of references to a couple of things that we'll put. I'll ask Yanis to go onto Mel's computer and just put in the chat so that we've got them there, and then we'll make a note for those who are in the room. So we'll get Yanis to do that in a minute. Brett and Anne, I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we'll give people a couple of minutes to reflect, and then we'll kind of open for questions for Brett or Yanis or Anne, and just remembering that respectfulness around questions, and that Anne and Brett and Yanis have the right to choose whether they answer those questions or not. So we'll just give you 5 minutes. I'll give you a little warning, that's okay.
Yeah.
About when your time's nearly
Yes, no, that's good.
and then we'll open for questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Yanis, for what you've shared with us then, and lots to digest. I think lots to think about and reflect on. We were talking when we took a brief pause. We were just thinking about what we hadn't had a chance to talk about yet, because we were on a bit of a roll, weren't we? That last little section. There was a couple of things that I wanted to say, and may want to respond to them. That there was something we were talking about yesterday, and about the about perspectives when it comes to support for victims, and that there was two things that came to mind for me when we were talking about it yesterday. One is that, and it comes back to a bit what Yanis was saying about moral injury and moral repair, but that support for victims is morally the right thing to do, and so that support in and of itself is really right and important. But actually, we were talking yesterday, and I was reflecting not to underestimate the value of what you have brought into the contact with me and my team, in terms of what we have learned and continue to learn from you and from other victims or people who might identify as survivors, or other language around that. But it also, I was thinking about the importance of listening, and Yanis was saying that about listening, but really listening, and not making assumptions. One of the things that brought to mind for me was about the importance of listening to everything, and not just listening to the things that feel more comfortable to listen to. And so I know that it's been important for me to listen, and really listen, when you've had things to say that has been about anger or despair, and that's a word that you've talked about today, or disappointment or frustration, as well as when I'm having a a good day today, and I'm grateful for this, or this has been positive. One of the things that we encountered fairly early on was the discussion about a person who abused you, and the finding out that that person had died several years back, and that was, I think, devastating feels the word that comes to mind. There was a devastation for you, that there wasn't a sense of being able to seek a sense of justice, in a sense. That's the words that come to mind. I don't know if that kind of rings true for you, Aaron, whether that's...
Yes, it does. I think having at last met my husband, who gave me more strength, I think, and courage. We went to the police, and in Devon, and they said we must come up to the police in Gloucester about it, and I never did, because, like I think so many victims, you don't actually carry through what perhaps you should have done or could have done, either at the time or years later. And when I learnt that he was dead, yes, I did feel some anger and resentment that I had at last, in my own life and way, felt able to face him and to challenge, I suppose, but at least to have the opportunity to try and understand a little more with the terrible abuse that he had put on me. And both as Yanis had said, the holistic, I don't want to today talk about really both the moral and the spiritual deadening of everything, but the physical pain and all the operations that I've had later because of the kind of abuse that he gave. And I'm not even talking about the pregnancy and abortion. It's just too much, really, for me to be, or for you, I could be talking about it in how dirty one feels a lot of the time. Brett had arranged for me to be in a hotel here last night, and I had the most wonderful hot bath, and it was great. But I still come out inside feeling this dirt and shame that no one can take away other than probably me. And it's no good people thinking or hoping that that can be removed. It's again a way of my living, and I would think a lot of other people and, yes, victims that come and present themselves to you. And I actually still feel that although we made our video, I still feel now I need to make another one to really say what happened.
Thank you.
I was still wearing a mask.
Thank you. I was going to say one thing before we move on to the questions, which was just you talked about physical pain, and I know that's something that you've been engaging in is some holistic sort of whole body type therapy that has involved physical touch with a holistic therapist, and that's something that's really helped you. Again, it comes back to me about assumptions, that not assuming that talking therapy in and of itself would be the right thing for you. And this has been something that's proved to be helpful for some of the somatic symptoms of your PTSD. And so I just wanted to raise that as something that, again, not making assumptions and thinking about individuals as experts in their own lives and their own bodies, and that's something you've been able to engage with, and that's been really helpful. Is that fair to say? That's,
yes, it is.
Good.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
We've got 15 minutes, I think, for questions. I'm not sure if any questions have come in through mail, through the chat. There will be questions in the room, there'll be questions online, I'm sure. But do have a seat, have some tea, and we'll be going to hold. Yeah. So do unmute yourself if you have a question. Let's go to the room, the physical room first, if that's all right. And then we'll come to the virtual room. So does anyone in the room have any reflections or questions for Anne or Brett or Yanis? It's been a lot to listen to. Paul, thank you.
So 2 reflections really. One, always find that each individual case you deal with has its own specific. So what you're trying to learn, it seems, is principles. But I was really interested in sort of the agreement on the language you needed to use with someone at the very beginning, because if you get that wrong, it seems to me that it risks the whole conversation. So I thought that was really important. And the second thing, based on what Yanis was saying about it being a holistic thing, is that we can sometimes feel as safeguarding officers that the responsibility is ours, but it's not, it's our whole community's. But we have a responsibility to try and build that whole community to be responsible for the whole thing, which is one of the things we're trying hard to do, but it's not easy.
Thank you, Paul. Paul is the Parish Safeguarding Officer, just to kind of put that in context. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or reflections in the room before we ask those online?
Yeah, mine is conscious of that I am a male priest in the church, and obviously I represent the church. I'm a man. It's how do quite what I was trying to say. Support and help someone when I actually, in a sense, can represent or be similar to the abuser.
I'm not sure if people can hear the question online, so I'll just repeat that. So they're just asking, as a male priest in the Church of England, how can you ensure that you're not kind of representing,
and how best to support,
and how best to support and care for somebody?
Yeah.
If you occupy the same role or same gender,
and not to be a barrier
as the person who's the perpetrator. Thank you. Any thoughts on that from you,
I
Doug?
guess anything but that.
Thank you for realising that that's exactly the situation that I was placed into and still am, really. And I think you've got a difficult role there for many of people who may approach you. To be honest, I'm glad you're not wearing your dog collar. But I think probably difficult. But I sometimes wonder if my abuser knew of my sort of clerical background. Was that part of it? Or just that I was so close to the church and a young woman? And when we're talking about 60 years ago, very, very different than from what it is now. But it still remains the same for you.
Thank you. Heather, you had a question.
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit there, but I was just going to say, given the context of today, things have obviously changed. Would you feel more empowered today to come forward and expose your abuser?
Yes, I think so, because I think that hopefully we are living at a time when more people are coming forward, but there are still going to be many, many that don't. But I would hope that nobody waits for as long as I had. And today's society, yes, is more open, I think, but there's still a lot of abuse, and it's really up to, yes, the whole community, as Yanis says, to make victims feel that they can come forward. I'm disappointed that at the moment we're only addressing Church of England diocese. I would like to see this actually to become more public, and that people are, it's not just still rather confined and controlled by the church.
Thank you, Anne. Mel.
This isn't a question, Anne, but somebody would like to say that it means a lot that you chose to share today, and your bravery will have and has had a real impact on them. You're helping to create and build understanding, and they say thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you say thank you back?
Thank you.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, they can hear you actually.
They can hear you.
I'm just like,
Sorry, go on.
Can I ask you, when you found the courage to report to the police, you say in Devon, did you feel that they just dismissed you? That was there, and I'm hoping that we've moved on now, that if you went to that police force, they would have had somebody there to listen and to put you in touch with, rather than just say, oh, you need to go to Gloucester. Has anybody, somebody else may be able to answer this for me, is there somebody that would help you? Because you obviously were going to start your journey at that point. And did you feel like a barrier, a roadblock had been put in front of you? And if so, how can we help somebody like you get around that?
The Devon police actually were very understanding. There were two, one male, one female, and they came to my home where I was at the time, so I didn't even have to go to the police station. And yes, they did believe me, and explained that because the abuse had happened in Gloucester, then I would need to see Gloucester police. So in actual fact, they were quite polite for them, probably. It was me that put up the barrier and didn't go any further. Perhaps if they had said, we will contact Gloucester police and we will tell them what you have said, and then let them make the decision. So yes, maybe their way of dealing with me was limited. I would hope that it would be rather better today.
Brett, do you want to just interject on that, and then we'll go to the next question online?
Thanks, Anne. I think what I would just add is that things have definitely moved forward since then. I think there were definitely some positive aspects to Anne's experience. I think that there's a few things to pick up on that. Firstly, is that contacting anybody in authority can be a barrier in and of itself. No matter how open or understanding somebody might be, police represents authority, and that can be really difficult for people. So if we're thinking about individuals we're supporting who may be at the point of I am going to, or I think I need to report this to the police, I think that's always something we should be keeping in mind. In the case of officers coming to somebody's home, not in uniform, that would be a fairly standard approach now. And also the ABE, achieving best evidence interviews. So it's always about how can we work with the individual in a hopefully as trauma informed a way as possible. I think there is definitely still some way to go with people understanding what does that actually mean and what does that look like in practice. But I think, and now there would be much more in the way of join up from force to force. Really helpful thing that we have within the Church of England is a national information sharing agreement with the National Police Chiefs Councils. So it means that we can, in a diocesan safeguarding team, we're able to go to any given constabulary and say, we have some information, we need to seek some information. It enables us, and I know we've had some examples where it's really enabled us to find out information quicker and also join things up quicker for people who are at the point of disclosing. So there's definitely some things, and that's really whistle stop kind of covering that, but there's a few things, yeah.
Mel, let's get the questions online.
So an incredibly powerful session. Thank you so much, Anne, for your courage in speaking with us all today. So much to reflect on, and a reminder of the length of time the abuse impacts victims. Clearly, you've built trust and a very positive relationship with your safeguarding officer. I just want to ask Anne, did she have a choice of a male or female safeguarding officer? And would this help / does gender matter? Thank you again.
That kind of links into the second question as well a little bit. Do you want to put them together now?
So the second question is, thank you again, Anne, for your courage. Your courage is inspiring, challenging, and it has been a real privilege to hear from you today. What prompted you to write to the bishop, and was the fact that the bishop was a woman significant? What lessons do you think the church could learn from this? So both kind of.
So what triggered getting in touch and question about gender? Yeah.
Gender, no, I wasn't given any alternative to Brett. And I'm pleased that I wasn't, because we have worked so well. And maybe being a man did help. And to the reverend over there, yes, don't be worried that you are the male. Bishop Rachel, no, it didn't make any difference. I had no idea who it was when the abuse was happening. It was a male bishop. But when I first wrote, I just literally, my letter was, Dear Bishop. So that was immaterial, that whatever the gender. Why I delayed, was it?
What prompted
What prompted me? I was coming up to being 80, and that was really it. That suddenly I just needed to get going with opening up. So I think it was really, yes, the age that was looming.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to both those people.
Yes, and then we'll have final questions from anyone online or face to face, and then we'll close.
I would like to say one thing which has to do with the language, because it's something that has been repeated many times. And I will reflect on the reflection about if there is any agreement on the language. In the National Safeguarding Team, we normally use the phrase victims and survivors in order to highlight two things. To highlight also people's way of being called, but also I will repeat something that says in the we worked hard for 2 years to develop the National Survivor Participation Framework. And the work we did with the survivors through the last 2 years, we spent a lot of time reflecting on this. And what we have ended up is, and we put that in the framework, is that it's quite important to give the people the choice to decide the way of how they would like to be described. But here I would like to say something of my own practice in the church, which can help you as well. You don't have to repeat. If someone already has been recognized and had the courage to name there as a victim, from that day that they have disclosed, they stop to be called victim, but can be called Peter, Janice, and Becca or Brett. And this builds the relationship. If you just use the names of people. And it's something we learn in the National Safeguarding team, when people start engaging, so that from that time our partners, our co-travelers in that journey of making the church a safer place. So they become and give the name, sometimes is the best. And the other important thing about the soldiers, which I feel that is something important to recognize, the emotional toll and the burden and the effort that has been given by safeguarding professionals in the church, and we should be acknowledged that. And clergy, we don't minimize the role of the clergy, but it's quite important. What can be very important is something which is part of the trauma for practice. Be authentic. People really want honesty and authenticity, something that they didn't have for many years. So these things can matter on building that relationship with people. So don't take it that it's difficult. Sometimes, to be honest, might be the best way to approach it.
Thank you, Yanis. We've got 3 minutes left. I'd just like to mostly say thank you to Anne for your courage, for sharing with us, for being with us. It's a real privilege to learn from you and to have been with you for the last couple of days. It is hard to listen to this. You know, we asked that people either watch the video or read the transcripts before. So thank you for coming both online and face to face, and please try and do something to look after yourselves after this. We've got tea and biscuits, and there are people in this room that can stay on and talk with those in this room. Gemma and Mel are online, so if anyone wants to chat with them, then do send them a message. And is there anything you want to say before we finish, or Brett?
What
What are we going to say?
Oh, thank you to all of you for coming. And thank you, Brett, for being my safeguard, because I really wouldn't be here without you.
Thank you. And I, just reflecting back again on what you said about a year ago, thinking that no way would you imagine even coming back to Gloucester, let alone doing this. I really want to reflect back again that sense of journey and the distance that you've come, and the privilege again of doing this with you today, and having you with us here in Gloucester. So thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.